Welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today we're going to talk about certain trends in individual counties and where both candidates can improve in order to win the Electoral College. Make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this, and make sure to go ahead and go to our fundraising page because we are funding SoCal Strategies to conduct more national and state polling for the rest of the cycle. Me and Ready Go Politics are co-sponsoring SoCal Strategies to conduct more polling. We are going to be in the field in Pennsylvania, and when the results come out, me and Ready Go, as well as SoCal himself, are going to be on a video discussing the results. Any support would be greatly appreciated. Now, looking at the Electoral College map, at this point, the race has essentially narrowed down to a certain point where it pretty much comes down to a couple of states. Harris is up in the popular vote by 1.4% according to my model. And so we are now looking at the major 7 swing states, which includes Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. I'm going to put this in the lean column just because of the fact that it's a district that's trending to the left of the nation, and the popular vote is not swinging to the right enough for it to flip. All of these states right here that are in blank have been decided by under 3 points, and the nationwide popular vote shift is about 3.1%. So practically any of these states would basically be in play to go either way. And so the first state I want to talk about is North Carolina, because the former president actually won here in the last cycle. He actually ended up winning it by about 1.3 percentage points. He ended up doing somewhat decent in these counties in the south of the state, and that really pushed his margins in the state of North Carolina. He also performed a lot better in the new North Carolina's 1st district. This is a district, or at least an area, that's starting to trend to the right per se. And you could say that these are some type of suburban counties, but Donald Trump picked up a lot of votes in this part of the state. Meanwhile, Donald Trump lost some votes in the suburbs. The suburbs is what really killed Donald Trump back in 2020, and a lot of that had to do with COVID for the most part. You know, that really drove it, and, you know, the economy at the time kind of tanked, and that really affected some of the results. And so if Donald Trump wants to improve in this state, really all he's got to do is just keep performing better in the southern and northeastern part of the state and kind of stop the trends in a lot of these suburban counties. And, you know, because he won the state by 3.7% back in 2016. And we can actually kind of look at a county map here, and if anything, we can even do this where we basically have like a certain margin, you know, per county. Essentially, this, we could end up doing this per se, but essentially this is kind of where we're at in the state as of right now. So clearly he ended up doing a lot better in places like Halifax, Northampton, you know, Bertie. He ended up doing significantly better in some of these places, and this county up here basically stayed roughly the same. You clearly see that in the, you know, southern part of the state, he also ended up doing better in Richmond. He ended up performing like 7 points better. In Robinson, he ended up doing a couple points better too. He actually improved by about 14 points. That's pretty impressive. Blendon, he won by 9. In this election, he won it by 14. So clearly there was a bit of an improvement there, and then he kind of lost ground in some of these suburban counties in, you know, the southern part of the state, in the western part of the state. So as long as he kind of stops those trends and kind of continues to grow in some of these parts in North Carolina, he more than likely will win the state as of right now. Looking at the state of Georgia, this is the next one, and this is a big one too because it actually flipped to Joe Biden from 2016. And the main killer here was the Atlanta suburbs. The Atlanta suburbs, with the economy, Black Lives Matter, COVID, all this stuff ended up zooming to the left off a cliff in this cycle. You actually can see it here. If we were to go here, you see that it was a lot closer. Like Henry was like a 4-point victory. Now it was like 20 points for Biden. You see Newton was like a 2-point win for Clinton. Now it's like a 10-point victory. Like, they're huge differences. Gwinnett, like 6 points. Here, it's like 18. And you see here in Cobb, 2 points for Clinton. Biden won that by like 14. Even Fulton, believe it or not, if you actually look at Fulton, it's like a 46-point victory. And here it was only like 41 for Clinton. And Fayette was like 19 points for Trump. Now it's only like 6 points. Splating like 20 points for Trump before, it was like 24. So he's even lost ground in some of the exurban counties outside of Atlanta as well. That really hurt him in the state at large. And so if he's actually able to kind of slow these down, because it honestly depends on how he does with African American turnout, because if African American turnout, if he gains with black voters, he's probably going to end up doing significantly better in some of these places. Now, what really killed him, that could have saved him, is actually these outer suburbs in Atlanta that have more of a white population. Those actually could have saved him if he had basically stopped the bleeding in those counties. He would have been able to win Georgia, but unfortunately, it was just enough to stop him. And he did gain in some rural counties in Georgia, but Biden actually made some gains in the western or the eastern part of the state, like by Savannah, for example. He ended up kind of performing a little better there. He kind of did better in this like blue belt part of the state. He actually ended up performing a little bit better in that area. And believe it or not, the only county that flipped was actually Burke County, which is pretty interesting. That's like the only really big, that's really the only flip on the map. So you clearly see he ended up performing, he underperformed in Montgomery County. He underperformed there as well by just a tiny bit, but it was enough to move it not in that particular column. And really what he's got to do is really get his rural base out. If he's able to get that rural turnout out, if he's really able to do it and get the rural turnout up, he'll be able to win the state. And if the Atlanta trends kind of reverse, it'll actually be even better for him. So if he's able to reverse the Atlanta trends like a tiny bit, you know, he would be able to essentially win that state pretty much and do better in the rurals. Now, if Harris does better in Atlanta and Trump doesn't really do better in the rules enough, then she may be able to win it. But with the economy and how everything is right now and the fact that she's not really popular, I think Trump probably wins the state by 2-3. And if we look at a state like Arizona, again, very short, simple, story. Maricopa is the killer here. I mean, Biden made really small gains in some of these counties up here, which Trump is more than likely going to make gains in. And this is technically enough. Like, he'd really, like, if Maricopa's margin stays the same, if he keeps gaining in some of these southern counties and gains in these 3 northern counties, he actually doesn't even need that many votes out of Maricopa. He can narrowly win the state of Arizona, which is pretty interesting. But I do think he is going to close the gap here. I think he's going to win Maricopa by 2 or 3. That gives him the state by probably a couple points, probably like 2-3, which is similar to what I have in my election model. If we go ahead and look at Nevada, again, really, really straightforward here. The only thing really is, Clark County did actually shift to the right. And you saw a lot of urban areas kind of shift to the right for whatever reason. Even if the suburbs trended left, it was like a really strange phenomenon. It was kind of weird, but that's essentially what ended up happening in that state. And I think with Clark County, with it being a white working class and Hispanic kind of area, I think it may shift to the right, kind of how like Miami-Dade did in 2020. So you may see that possibly happen. That's why I kind of have the state in the lean column. Now, Wisconsin, this is interesting because what really killed them wasn't really necessarily the rurals. It was actually the suburb counties, the suburban counties of Ozaukee and Waukesha. Those WOW counties are kind of trending. They're not necessarily going to Biden, but Biden gained enough statewide to narrowly win by 20,000 votes. And that is the main issue. He didn't even gain in Milwaukee that much. He actually gained in Waukesha and Ozaukee more. And that actually influenced the margin a little bit more than a place like Milwaukee did. Dane County had more of an impact on the election than that. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. We even see like Door County even moved. That probably netted Biden like 2,000-3,000 votes in the state. But you did see Trump gain in some rural parts of Wisconsin, but even like a couple rural areas shifted a little bit to the left. So that's not necessarily good either. You saw a couple places basically stay stagnant or like barely move to the right. He needed a little bit more gain in some of those rural counties. So really, if he kind of hammers home the rules, he'll be able to win Wisconsin by less than a point. But based out of my model, he's supposed to win Wisconsin by 1.6%. So he's probably going to gain in some of the WOW counties as well. And he may even close the gap in a place like Dane. So we'll see what ends up happening with Harris. Looking at Michigan, this one's going to be hard because Biden gained quite a bit in the southern part of the state, to the point where like he gained 8 points, 9 points in Kent, 6 points, 5, 6, Oakland, he gained 6 points, Macomb, he gained 4, and he gained in the northern part of the state too, and Trump's rural performances didn't really improve that much for him to even have a fighting chance. Right now, my election model does have the state as like a tilt margin in the forecast, so that may possibly explain it. But I think he's going to have to outperform in the rules, and on top of that, he's going to have to really close the gap in some of these bigger city areas in order to win the state. Pennsylvania, what actually killed him was the eastern part of the state. I mean, this is what really killed him because, and again, a lot of these counties being stagnant didn't help either. But you see, he actually gained in Philadelphia County, which I expect him to now as well. And with Biden gone, this eastern strength in Pennsylvania is definitely gonna really affect Harris's margin in the state. And I think Trump's gonna probably end up flipping these back by a pretty decent amount. I think he's probably going to even win Lackawanna, where Scranton is. I think he's going to be able to win that. Bucks County actually just became a Republican county in voter registration, so that's probably going to end up flipping too. That might be enough to put the state in the tilt margin for Trump, just that alone. So we'll see how all the results unfold, but I think he's probably going to be able to win the state by a couple points. I'd even argue that Pennsylvania may even be a slightly better state for him than Wisconsin, because we've seen some pretty questionable things out of Wisconsin recently, especially with the approval rating data. Harris is ahead by 7 points, so we've seen some really interesting stuff out of there. But anyways, guys, that is it for this video. Make sure to go ahead and hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.